is your first time here, whether you've been coming here forever, whether you're in person or on Zoom, welcome to our time of celebration, reflection, and community. My name is Rob Whiteman, and I'm minister with Dundee Unitarians. And this service was first done on August 22nd this year in Dundee. And very generously, people have asked me to repeat it. So let us take a few moments to invite the spirit of life and of love to be present among us and to awaken within us. Cliff Reed said this in his recent book: "There are two kinds of religion in the world, true religion and false religion. Religion with love at its heart is true. All other religion is false, whatever its claims and dogmas. May our religion be true. May it be true because it is loving, merciful, and kind. That's all that matters." And so we light our chalice. And I invite you now to sing hymn Green 172, All Are Welcome Here. Today, I want to share with you some readings that show different understandings of the world to which we, as creatures of the world, may be used to. I want to suggest that our way of seeing the world may not be the only one. I accept that some of these will be a little puzzling, but I don't think that's a problem. I don't think we can, nor should we expect to understand everything in the world. To expect that is a delusion. And I think to close our minds to other ways of seeing the world, a mistake. So let us start near to home. In early July, I went to Muck for a week. Indeed, I recorded a service for Glasgow while I was there. But while I was there, I also read Ring of Bright Water. I think I may have read it as a child. I often like to read books on holiday that speak of where you are. Reading the Iliad and the Odyssey in Greece made them somehow more alive. And Ring of Bright Water is set on the mainland opposite the small isles and Skye. Before the otters bit, for which it's famous, starts, there's a setting of the scene, of the part of the world that's in, and includes this. Whereas the stories of Second Sight are comparatively few, and refer mostly commonly to past generations, it should be realized that this bears no relation to the current credence in the faculty or to the number of people who are still believed to possess it. Quite contrary to popular opinion, a person having or believing him or herself to have this occult power is extremely reticent about it, usually afraid of it, and conceals it from all but his most intimate friends. This is not because he's afraid of mockery or disbelief in the sense that his neighbor will say, "Behold this dreamer," but because men fear proof of a power beyond their own and are uncomfortable in the company of one who claims or admits to it. These people are convinced of being endowed with what is now more normally called extrasensory perception, and they're also frightened of what their own clairvoyance may show them. And it seems that they will willingly exchange their lot for that of the common man. Only when they are convinced that their gift can, at that moment, be turned to benign use, are they prepared to call it voluntarily into play. My impression is that a deep, fundamental belief in the existence of second sight is practically universal throughout the Western Highlands and the Hebrides, even among intelligent and well-read people, and that the few scoffers are paying lip service to a skeptical sophistication they do not share. My nearest neighbour at Camasferna, Callum Murdo McKinnon, comes of Skye stock and tells a tale of his forebears, which by its very simplicity is hard to ascribe to past invention. In the days of his great-grandfather, a boy was drowned at sea, fishing in the bay before the village, and his mother became distraught with the desire to recover her son's body and give it a Christian burial. Some half-dozen boats with grappling irons cruised to and fro all day over the spot where he'd been lost, but found nothing. The talk of the village was naturally centred on the subject, and in the late evening, Callum Murdo's great-grandfather, over 80 years of age, infirm and totally blind, learned for the first time of all that had taken place. At length he said, "If they will take me to the knoll overlooking the bay in the morning, I will tell them where the body lies. They will just need one boat." The searchers obeyed him, and in the morning he was carried to a summit of the knoll by his grandson, who brought with him a plaid with which to signal at command. For more than half an hour, the boat rowed to and fro in the bay below them, with grapples hanging ready. But the old man sat with his blind head in his hands and said never a word. Suddenly, he cried in a strong voice, "Tonand tog a tonag, hoist the plaid." His grandson did so, and the grapples sank and returned to the surface with the body of the drowned boy. It's easier to be skeptical when one's not in the Hebrides, easier when one's vision is not clarified or obscured by the common sense of one's fellow men. That is from Ring of Bright Water. And we're going to have 3 pieces of music this morning. Well, I say 3 pieces of music because in fact, they're the same piece of music 3 different ways. We're going to have Ave Verum Corpus, so the same words, differently done. Again, the theology might not be ours, but it's different ways of understanding, different ways of seeing, and therefore I think it has some validity. And the first one is Ave Verum Corpus by Bird. Our second reading is from a doorstep that I read in the first lockdown, Autobiography of a Yogi. And I think it too raises questions about how we understand the world. It's quite a long reading. I've thought about ways of cutting it down, and I can't really do it in a sensible way. So just make sure you're sitting comfortably and go with the story. Father, if I promise to return home without coercion, may I take a sightseeing trip to Benares? Father promised to give my request due consideration, and the next day he summoned me and held out a round-trip pass from Beray to Benares, a number of rupee notes, and 2 letters. I have a business matter to propose to Benares' friend, Kedar Nathu Babu. Unfortunately, I've lost his address, but I believe you'll be able to get this letter to him through our common friend, Swami Pranabananda. The Swami, my brother disciple, has attained an exalted spiritual stature. You will benefit by his company. This second note will serve as your introduction. I set forth with the zeal of my 12 years, though time has never dimmed my delight in new scenes and strange faces. Reaching Benares, I proceeded immediately to the Swami's residence. The front door was open. I had made my way to a long hall-like room on the second floor. A rather stout man, wearing only a loincloth, was seated in lotus posture on a slightly raised platform. His head and unwrinkled face were clean-shaven. A beatific smile played about his lips. To dispel my thought that I'd intruded, he greeted me as an old friend, Baba Anand. His welcome was given heartily in a childlike voice. I knelt and touched his feet. Are you Swami Pranabananda? He nodded. Are you Bhagavati's son? His words were out before I had time to get to father's letter from my pocket. In astonishment, I handed him the note of introduction, which now seemed superfluous. Of course, I will locate Kedar Nath Babu for you. The saint again surprised me by his clairvoyance. He glanced at the letter and made a few affectionate references to my parents. Abruptly terminating our conversation, the saint became gravely motionless. A sphinx-like air enveloped him. At first his eyes sparkled, as if observing something of interest, then grew dull. I felt abashed at his poor loquacity. He had not yet told me how I could meet father's friend. A trifle restlessly, I looked around me in the bare room, empty except for us two. My idle gaze took in his wooden sandals lying under the platform seat. Little sir, don't get worried. The man you wish to see will be with you in half an hour. The yogi was reading my mind, a feat not too difficult at that moment. Again, he fell into inscrutable silence. My watch informed me that 30 minutes had elapsed. The Swami aroused himself. I think Kedar Nath Babu is nearing the door. I heard somebody coming up the stairs. An amazed incomprehension arose suddenly. My thoughts raced in confusion. How is it possible that father's friend has been summoned to this place without the help of a messenger? The Swami has spoken to no one but myself since my arrival. Abruptly, I quitted the room and descended the steps. Halfway down, I met a thin, fair-skinned man of medium height. He appeared to be in a hurry. Are you Kedar Nath Babu? Excitement coloured my voice. Yes. Are you not Bhagavati's son, who's been waiting here to meet me? He smiled in friendly fashion. Sir, how do you happen to come here? I felt baffled resentment over his inexplicable presence. Everything is mysterious today. Less than an hour ago, I just finished my bathing in the Ganges when Swami Pranabananda approached me. I have no idea how he knew I was there at that time. Bhagavati's son is waiting for you in my apartment, he said. Will you come with me? I gladly agreed. As we proceeded hand in hand, the Swami in his wooden sandals was strangely able to outpace me, though I wore these stout walking shoes. How long will it take you to reach my place? Pranabanandaji suddenly halted to ask me this question. About half an hour. I've something else to do at present. He gave me an enigmatical glance. I must leave you behind. You can join me in my house where Bhagavati's son and I will be awaiting you. Before I could remonstrate, he dashed swiftly past me and disappeared into the crowd. I walked here as fast as possible. This explanation only increased my bewilderment. I inquired how long he'd known the Swami. We met a few times last year, but not recently. I was very glad to see him again at the bathing ghat. I cannot believe my ears. Am I losing my mind? Did you meet him in a vision, or did you actually see him, touch his hand and hear the sound of his feet? I don't know what you're driving at, he flashed angrily. I'm not lying to you. Can't you understand that only through the Swami could I have known you were waiting at this place for me? Why, that man Swami Pranabhananda has not left my sight a moment. Since I first came an hour ago, I blurted out the whole story. His eyes opened wildly. Are we living in this material age, or are we dreaming? I never expected to witness such a miracle in my life. I thought this Swami was just an ordinary man, and now I find he can materialize an extra body and work through it. Together we enter the saint's room. Look, those are the very sandals he was wearing at the ghat, Kedarnath Babu whispered. He was clad only in a loincloth, just as I see him now. As the visitor bowed before him, the saint turned to me with a quizzical smile. Why are you stupefied at all this? The subtle unity of the phenomenal world is not hidden from true yogis. I instantly see and converse with my disciples in distant Calcutta. They can similarly transcend at will every obstacle of gross matter. It was probably an effort to stir spiritual ardor in my young breast that the Swami had condescended to tell me of his powers of astral radio and television. But instead of enthusiasm, I experienced only an awe-stricken fear. An interesting reading. And we're now going to have our second hymn, number 142 in the Purple Book, Shining Through the Universe. And it's a further hymn picking up our interfaith theme of looking at things in a different way. And this time it's based on the Tao Te Ching, number 142 in the Purple Book. Our next reading is about picking a Dalai Lama. So the last reading was a Hindu reading, and I'm now going to give you an extract from a Buddhist context. And I've drawn this together from a number of sources. It's about how the current Dalai Lama was selected or found. When Lama Tandup was 2 years old, a search party that had been sent out by the Tibetan government to find the new incarnation of the Dalai Lama arrived at Kumbum Monastery. It had been led there by a number of signs. One of these concerned the embalmed body of his predecessor, Thupten Gyatso, the 13th Dalai Lama. During the mummification process, the head was discovered to have turned from facing south to northeast. Shortly after that, the regent, himself a senior lama, had a vision. Looking into the waters of the sacred lake Lamoy Latso in southern Tibet, he clearly saw the Tibetan letters R, Ka, and Ma float into view. These were followed by the image of a three-storied monastery with a turquoise and gold roof, and a path running from it to a hill. Finally, he saw a small house with strangely shaped guttering. He was sure that the letter R referred to Amdo, the northeastern province, so it was there that the search party was sent. By the time they reached Kumbum, the members of the search party felt they were on the right track. It seemed likely that if the letter R referred to Amdo, then Ka must indicate the monastery at Kumbum, which was indeed three-storied and turquoise roofed. They now only needed to locate a hill and a house with peculiar guttering. So they began to search the neighboring villages. When they saw the gnarled branches of juniper wood on the roof of His Holiness's parents' house, they were certain that the new Dalai Lama would not be far away. Nevertheless, rather than reveal the purpose of their visit, the group asked only to stay the night. The leader of the party, Kutsang Rinpoche, then disguised himself as a servant and spent much of the evening observing and playing with the youngest child in the house. The child recognized him and called out, "Sera Lama, Sera Lama." Sera was Kutsang Rinpoche's monastery. The next day they left, only to return a few days later as a formal deputation. This time they brought with them a number of possessions that had belonged to the 13th Dalai Lama, together with several similar items that did not belong to the 13th Dalai Lama. Could the child recognize what had belonged to him in his former life, among other objects that did not? Rinpoche began by holding up two dark-colored rosaries and asking which one the boy wanted. The right one, as it turned out. The same happened with a pair of yellow rosaries. Then followed near disaster. On being shown two canes and pausing for a while, the little boy picked up the wrong one. But after a moment, he picked them both up again and examined the handle and tip of each one with concentration. They were both of the same design, the only difference being in the tip, one of which was made of bronze, the other of plain iron. This time he held on to the correct one, holding it straight with its tip to the floor. In itself, this near mistake was a most auspicious sign. It was later recalled that the 13th had in fact given away the first cane to a colleague. That must be why the child had picked it up and then put it down again. And so it goes on. They also discover in their time in the village that there was a rainbow over the house at the time that the boy was born. And in our time for reflection this morning, I invite you to mull over this morning's readings. See what you think of them. Do they pique your curiosity? Do you immediately think, well, that can't be right. There must be a logical explanation. Do you feel that there are mysteries out there that we can't or won't understand? So that was our second Ave Verum Corpus, this time by Mozart. Apart from the first reading from the Hebrides, I've tried to use examples with a religious context. Most of them were stories. I've done that with a reason. Faith gives us a way of interpreting the world. Different faiths give us different ways of interpreting the world. We could take some time to consider where the different faiths only express the different parts of the world in which they emerged. They certainly shape and are shaped by their local culture. They're also an important part of people's identity as they travel and settle in different parts of the world from where they grow up. I'm in no doubt that travel is a good thing. Travel does indeed broaden the mind if we open our eyes to see what is around us. Preceding and in the first year of my ministry training, I did part-time jobs to make money, usually 2, sometimes 3. And one of them was as interfaith officer of the Church of Scotland. The task was to be secretary to a group preparing a report for the General Assembly. But at the heart of the group was a fundamental split. One faction saw the role of interfaith work as being contact with people of other faiths so that you could preach Christianity to them. In the end, I realized that such a position was so offensive and small-minded, as well as being so far from where I was, that I could not continue, and I resigned. I continued to attend postgrad seminars on Zoom. In a recent one, the professor outlined his philosophy of interfaith, and I was pointed to that stuff on the Dalai Lama section by his work. And the professor argues that we should approach interfaith work confident in our own position and belief, not seeking to convert others, but with an open mind that the reflections of others on the divine nature, their understanding of truth, can deepen our understanding. And that makes sense to me and can only be a wise thing to do. Who would deliberately seek not to learn and understand? And for our closing words, I want to continue our interfaith theme and the idea that we can learn from different ways of seeing things. These words come from Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, and they will explore different ways of seeing God. And they will be followed by singing number 102 in the Purple Book, again with the karaoke system, and then a final Ave Verum Corpus by Elgar. The music has been taken in chronological order. But first, the words of Guru Nanak. O God beautiful, O God beautiful, in the forest thou art green, in the mountain thou art high, in the river thou art restless, in the ocean thou art grave, to the serviceful thou art service, to the lover thou art love, to the sorrowful thou art sympathy, to the yogi thou art bliss. O God beautiful, O God beautiful, at thy feet, O I do bow.
Yeah.